Today's lesson is called A Short and Sweet History of Puddings. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff.
My name is Roger, and today we're going to continue talking about puddings, or different kinds of pudding. And, of course, we've been mainly talking about puddings that sound like they're kind of sweet desserts, okay? Something that is more like a treat. It's not part of a main meal. And, of course, you would eat it because you have a sweet tooth. But today we're going to find out that, hey, puddings were different back in the day. Back in the Middle Ages, they were something entirely different. And even nowadays, some different places like Scotland have puddings that are totally what you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, but you know what? The puddings that we're going to be talking about today are actually going to be more to my liking, I think. Yeah, as a kid, I did like the dessert style of pudding, a sweet pudding now and again, but I'm no longer interested in sweet food. So, you know what? A sweet dessert style pudding, I want nothing to do with that. I just don't have a sweet tooth. But maybe one of these savory style puddings from a place like, I don't know, Scotland might just hit the spot. There you go. I'm instantly intrigued. Before, I wasn't into puddings. I was more into the history aspect of our element. Well, today, savory puddings plus history. I am one happy camper. Today is going to be great. I can't wait to get started on our lesson. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on our lesson. We'll start reading after this.
Today, puddings might be found under the desserts section of a restaurant menu, but back in the Middle Ages, when they first saw the light of day, puddings were typically savory. They started out as something like a boiled sausage. The meat was mixed with blood, fat, and maybe rice or bread. Then it was stuffed into animal stomachs or intestines before it was cooked. The more well-known of the savory puddings include Scotland's haggis, a mixture of sheep's organs, onion, fat, and spices stuffed in a sheep's stomach and boiled.
各位好，第一部分我们看到单字 savory， 这个字是形容词，指咸的。例如 These rice dumplings have an incredibly savory flavor. 这些粽子非常咸香美味。另外，这个字除了上面的意思，还可以指美味可口的。可以说 The hostess set out several savory snacks for her guests. 女主人端出多道可口点心招待客人。再来，我们看到一个片语 start out， 指开始，用法为 start out as 加名词或 start out 加动名词，表示一开始是某种状态、身份等。像是 Fixing cars started out as a hobby for Eddie, but then it became his job. 修车对 Eddie 来说一开始只是个兴趣，但之后变成他的工作。又或者说 We started out jogging on the trail, but we got tired quickly and changed to walking. 我们一开始在小径上慢跑，但很快就累了，于是改成走路。接着我们看到单字 stuff， 这个字是动词，有塞满、填充的意思。举例来说 My pillow is stuffed with feathers, so it is very soft. 我的枕头塞满羽毛，所以它很软。另外，这个字除了可以当动词，还可以当不可数名词，指物品、东西。可以说 Tom spent several hours clearing stuff out of his garage. Tom 花了好几个小时清除车库里的东西。再来，我们看到一个名词 intestine， 指肠。例如 Tapeworms live in the intestines of their host. 绦虫寄生在宿主的肠道当中。
All right, everybody. Now, when you hear the word pudding, you probably are going to be thinking about something that's sweet. And, of course, if you're eating in a Western restaurant, you're going to see desserts as part of the menu. That's something sweet that you eat after a meal. So today, puddings might be found under the desserts section of a restaurant menu. But back in the Middle Ages, when they first saw the light of day, puddings were typically savory. interesting. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the Middle Ages when Europe was kind of getting its act together before they became a major world power. They weren't so powerful back then, but back in the Middle Ages, when puddings first existed, they were mostly savory, or typically, usually savory. Savory just means kind of salty and spicy as opposed to sweet.
Exactly, savory. I think of salty foods that have that type of flavor as being savory. Yeah, savory foods are definitely not sweet foods. By the way, it says here, when puddings first saw the light of day, i.e. when they first came into existence, okay, they were typically savory. Now, if something is typically something, it is normally or usually found in that form. Yeah, typically can mean regularly. Yeah, you could say back in the day, puddings were regularly savory. This is how you would expect them to be. This is how they were commonly found. And there's more, I should say. They started out as something like a boiled sausage. Yeah, earlier on day when I talked about black pudding. Black pudding does seem to be more like a sausage type food than a dessert pudding style food, even though they do share that same name, pudding. Anyways, it says here that these puddings started out as something like a boiled sausage. Yeah, this is how they were formed. This is how they were found, I should say, in their original form.
Yeah, you know what sausage is, of course, pieces of meat, but in this case, they were actually boiled sausage. Gee, that doesn't sound like modern pudding, but that's what it was back then. Here's a kind of recipe for pudding back in the day of the Middle Ages. The meat was mixed with blood, fat, and maybe rice or bread. Boy, does that sound appetizing. So yes, they got the meat from the killed animal. They chop it up, and then they mix it with blood. Why not? They just killed the animal, so there's lots of meat there and lots of blood, so you might as well use the blood too. They mix it together, and there's also fat from the animal. They mix that into, and then maybe you've got some rice, and maybe you've got some bread, and you just kind of all mush it all together. You mix it up, and that's how this recipe begins, but that's not all.
Now, this almost sounds like 猪血糕. Like before, you wouldn't shove it into an animal skin or an animal stomach or an intestine or anything like that. But yeah, you'd kind of make a pudding in this way. You've got the blood and maybe some rice or bread or something like that, and you kind of put it all together. It sounds like 猪血糕 to me. How about that? Now, there's this next step. You make something like 猪血糕, but then back in the day, they would stuff this stuff into animal stomachs or intestines before it was cooked. So you make this mixture, you shove it into something like an animal stomach or an intestine, and then you cook it. By the way, if you stuff something into something else, you put a lot of something into a container. In fact, you put so much stuff into a certain container that stuff is filled to the rafters. There's so much stuff in that container that overflow might be a problem. That stuff might be coming out of the container, okay? Very often you stuff things like pillows, okay? You get a pillowcase and you fill that case full of stuff like goose feathers and down and stuff like that, so that pillowcase is filled or stuffed with that soft stuff that then you can sleep on.
And the more well-known of the savory puddings include Scotland's haggis, which is a mixture of sheep's organs, onion, fat, and spices stuffed in a sheep's stomach and boiled. So this is a more well-known savory pudding, a more famous one. An example would be one from Scotland called haggis. And if you have a mixture of something, that means you just put a lot of different things together. Mixture here is the noun, a mixture of something. Jeonju Nai Cha is a mixture of black tea, milk, sugar, and tapioca balls.
I've heard of this before. Haggis. Oh man, that sounds intense. I've heard it's not super delicious. I hear it actually smells bad, but yes, if you are able to stomach it, no pun intended, if you're able to eat it and enjoy it, chances are somewhere inside of you is some Scottish genetics. Yeah, a true Scot is whether or not this person can eat and enjoy haggis. All right, everyone, with that, it's time for us to take a break, but don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Over time, people began using cloth instead of animal stomachs or intestines as a holder and adding spices, ginger, and dried fruit to the meat mix. Gradually, sweet puddings were introduced, but these were still boiled, just like the savory types. With ovens becoming more common in 19th century Britain, baked puddings began to appear. These looked like our modern-day pies and tarts, which explains why pudding can also mean dessert in Britain.
第二部分我们看到一个单字 gradually， 这个字是副词，指逐渐的。举例来说 Abby started at the bottom and gradually climbed to the top of the company. Abby 从基层做起，逐渐爬到公司高层。另外，去除这个字的字尾 ly 可以成为它的形容词 gradual， 指逐渐的。我们可以说 The weather forecast predicts a gradual increase in temperature over the coming weeks. 天气预报预测接下来几周会有逐渐升高的气温。接下来我们看到形容词 modern day， 用来指现代的、当代的，像是 Few modern-day doctors go to sick people's homes to care for them. 很少现代的医生会去病人家里照顾他们。最后我们看到一个单字 tart， 这个字在课文中是名词，指果馅饼、塔。例如 Children love to eat blueberry tarts with a glass of milk as an afternoon snack. 孩童们喜欢吃蓝莓塔搭配一杯牛奶作为下午点心。另外，这个字除了当名词外，还可以做形容词，指酸的。可以说 The lemonade was too tart and needed more sugar. 柠檬汁太酸了，需要多一点糖。
Okay, let's continue talking about some different variations of pudding. We just talked about the example of haggis in Scotland. Now let's talk about how that evolved into later forms of pudding. Over time, people began using cloth instead of animal stomachs or intestines as a holder. So a holder, of course, is something that holds these things together so that you can boil it in water. So they stopped using the stomachs and the intestines. Maybe they kept falling apart or they smelled too bad or something, so they started to use cloth instead. So they would use the cloth as a holder, and then they would add some other ingredients like ginger and spices and dried fruit. They would add these things to the meat mix. So we've got some new flavors there of haggis and coming into form of other puddings.
So there you go. They stopped using animal stomachs and intestines as holders or casings or containers, and they just went ahead and they started cooking the meat mix itself. And gradually, slowly over time, sweet puddings were introduced. But these were still boiled, just like the savory types. Remember, a very famous type of savory pudding, haggis. That's when you take a bunch of stuff, sheep's organs, onions, fat, so on and so forth. You stuff them in a sheep's stomach, and then you boil them. That's the way you used to make a savory pudding. Well, over time, they got rid of some of the more disgusting things like shoving things or stuffing things in sheep's stomachs or intestines and stuff like that. And they started just cooking the meat mix. So over time, gradually, puddings started to change. Okay, we went from savory to sweet, but one thing was retained. People continued cooking pudding by way of boiling. They boiled these foods.
Okay, and of course, if you're in the kitchen and you want to bake bread, you have an oven. So ovens became more popular. So with ovens becoming more common, or because ovens became more common in the 19th century, or in 19th century Britain, baked puddings began to appear. So they had ovens now, and they thought, hey, let's try to make some pudding in an oven instead of boiling it. So yes, in the 1800s, in the 19th century of the UK, baked puddings began to appear because they had the ovens. And of course, when you cook something in an oven, you bake it.
Ovens came on the scene and people started baking puddings, maybe puddings found their way onto the shelves in bakeries around London there in the 1800s. Who knows, but one way or another, yes, these baked puddings began to appear, and these looked like our modern-day pies and tarts, which explains why pudding can also mean dessert in Britain. So there you go. This might not be too far-fetched an idea. In the 1800s there, after people started baking desserts, maybe these desserts, these pudding desserts, I should say, did end up on the shelves at bakeries because these new puddings, these oven-baked puddings, they kind of look like pies and tarts, which you can commonly find in bakeries.
Right, and of course, in Britain, you oftentimes hear people referring to dessert or something sweet as pudding. Would you like to stay for pudding? Oh, yes, that would be lovely. So that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. It's time now to move on to the third and final part, and we'll wrap up our lesson about puddings.
Now that you know more about puddings, there's still one question. Which one tastes the best? There's only one way to find out. For as they say, the proof is in the pudding.
Roger, I've got a question I've got to ask right now.
Sure.
Are you more a fan of the sweet pudding or the savory pudding?
Well, I guess I like the sweet pudding because that's the only kind I've ever had, but the savory does sound interesting. I should at least try it if I go to the UK.
Next question. Let's say you do go to the UK and you find yourself in Scotland. Would you ever eat haggis?
Yeah, if you're going to travel that far, you should certainly try the local food. I'm mostly vegetarian, but hey, I believe in trying things when you're traveling. So yeah, if somebody offers it to me or if I see someplace selling it, I'll give it a go. I'll try it.
There you go. Yes, if you're a vegetarian, I can't think of anything less vegetarian than haggis, but you're right. If you are traveling and if you traveled that far to get to Scotland, you can't turn down the opportunity to enjoy some authentic haggis. Although, yeah, I might just pass. I might try something else and let my wife try the haggis instead. Anyways, let's go ahead and wrap up our lesson on the history of puddings. Here's a question for you. Another question, Roger. Now that you know more about puddings, there's still one question. Which one tastes the best?
Yeah, you kind of already asked me that question, but indeed, that's the ultimate question. That's the $10,000 question here. Which one tastes the best? Yeah, if you now know more about puddings than you did before, you got to be able to answer this question. What do you think that you would like? Well, there's only one way to find out. For, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. Interesting phrase there. That's only one way to find out. The proof is in the pudding, of course, is like one way of finding out the truth of something is to actually do it or to actually try it instead of talking about it. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson about puddings for today. Hopefully, we've made you nice and hungry and you can go out and find some pudding yourself. But hey, before we say goodbye, we'd like to hear once again from our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分提到19世纪烤箱在英国越来越普及，烤布丁就开始出现了。他说 These looked like our modern day pies and tarts, which explains why pudding can also mean dessert in Britain. 它们看起来像我们现代的派和塔，这就解释了为什么布丁在英国也可以用来表示甜点。所以当他们说 What's for pudding， 不是说布丁要吃什么，而是甜点要吃什么。好，那这边要介绍 which 代指前方子句的用法。我们知道用关系代名词 which 来修饰前方的先行词的时候，这个先行词通常就是事物。不过 which 也可以用来代指前方整个子句。那 which 所引导的关系子句就是用来补充说明前方那个子句。好，那因为 which 修饰的对象很明确，你不需要限定范围，所以是要用非限定用法， which 的前面必须加逗号。举例来说 Kyle is afraid of the dark, which is why he sleeps with the lights on. Kyle 怕黑，这就是他开灯睡觉的原因。好，那句子里面 which 就是用来指前面的子句，也就是 Kyle is afraid of the dark。 Kyle 怕黑的这件事，然后 which is why 就说这件事就是为什么怎么样怎么样，所以 which is why he sleeps with the lights on 表示这件事就是他开灯睡觉的原因。好，那我们回头再看课文的句子，这个 which 指的就是 These looked like our modern-day pies and tarts. 烤布丁看起来像我们现代的派和塔这件事情，然后 which explains why 就是说这件事情解释了为什么会怎么样怎么样。好，课文第3部分提到说 Now that you know more about puddings, there's still one question.Which one tastes the best? 既然你对布丁有更多认识，但是还有一个问题，就是哪一种是最好吃的呢？好，句子里面用到 now that 它表示既然由于，它是用来引导原因的从属连接词，也就是说呢 now that 后面你要接表示原因的子句，这个子句通常是对方已经知道的原因或者是讯息。举例来说 Now that everyone is here, we can start the meeting. 既然大家都到了，那我们可以开始开会了。好，那除了用 now that 我们也可以用 seeing that 或者是 since 来表达相同语义。这边提醒同学们 now that 跟 seeing that 的 that 其实可以省略不用，那我们接着就分别用 since 或是 seeing that 来造句吧。像你可以说 Seeing that it's raining outside, I think we should cancel the picnic. 既然外面在下雨，我觉得我们应该要取消野餐。Since you've eaten all your veggies, you can have some ice cream. 既然你已经把青菜都吃光光了，那你可以吃冰淇淋咯。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾单字吧。
Typically. It typically only takes Marcus about 15 minutes to get ready in the morning. Stuff. We stuffed the peppers with a mixture of ground meat, rice, cheese, and sauce, and then baked them. Mixture. Lastly, add a dash of salt to the mixture and stir well. Gradually. After moving to a new city, Fiona gradually became used to living there. Modern day. Thanks to technological advancements, modern-day buildings can be quite tall, even in areas that often experience earthquakes. Tart. Without a doubt, the best dessert at this restaurant is the tart.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Time now for our discussion starter for today. And the question is, do you prefer puddings that are savory or sweet?
You got a chance to answer this previously, or earlier, I should say, so maybe I'll give it a try right now. Now, I think puddings that are savory are more enjoyable because I don't have a sweet tooth. So give me a savory pudding any day of the week, but I don't want to eat haggis, okay? So any savory pudding other than haggis, I'll give it a try, but haggis, yeah, I will save that for the Scots.
Well, personally, I like sweet puddings better because, well, to tell you the truth, I've never tried any other kind. The only kind of pudding I've ever had is the sweet stuff. And I think there's a pudding shop down in Tainan or something that has all sorts of different puddings. My daughter told me all about it. I'm dying to try it.
Okay, everyone. With that, today's article is now complete. But, as always, we sure hope that you guys have enjoyed reading along with us. Anyways, I'm Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.